For more on this, let's bring in Negar Mortazavi, a Senior Fellow at the Centre for International Policy and host of the Iran podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Let's start first with this visit to Moscow by Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian leader. Where does Russia stand on Israel-Palestine more generally, and does he have any sway over the conflict, or is this meeting purely symbolic, do you think?
Well, I think Russia has partially benefited from the flare-up in the Middle East because it's taken the attention away from its attack on Ukraine. Basically, it has served as a distraction. It's another important war where the U.S., its European allies, are paying attention, tied up, spending resources, sending arms and financial support, and that does take away the attention from Ukraine, where everyone's attention was before October 7th. At the same time, I don't think Russia benefits or sees in its own benefit a major war breaking out in the region, in the Middle East, essentially Iran and Israel going head-to-head in an open war, or the U.S. being pulled into a larger war in the region. So I think it's kind of a hedging situation where they have so far seen some benefit from the flare-up, but at the same time, they don't want it to escalate too much and possibly may want to see a ceasefire. But as far as having a sway, I don't think they have as much on either side, on either of the two parties, as, for example, the United States has on Israel.
Right. So in terms of this statement by Iran that it will only hold back from direct retaliation if a ceasefire is agreed upon, how much sway or pressure will that put on talks in Thursday? Do you think it will make any impact?
I think the Iranians are hoping that it would make an impact because everyone sees, as we see, Washington and major European powers were warning an escalation, asking Iran to not retaliate. They see this, Iran retaliating and then Israel responding, as a major escalation that has the threat or the risk of this, expanding into something that's uncontrollable or a major war. So Iran, I think, is providing an off-ramp for itself, saying if ceasefire succeeds, they're keeping this option open, I think, that they may not retaliate because they also don't want a major escalation. But at the same time, I think they're signaling, or the pressure that they're getting from especially some domestic forces, is that they have to establish some level of deterrence. Otherwise, the Israelis will take a step further the next time.
Talk to us a little bit about what kind of attack we could expect from Iran and how it decides its regional policy. Are we looking at potentially something quite sophisticated that might involve Iran's network of allied groups, not just targeting Israel, but across the Middle East for, areas that might target the United States as well? Or do you see this as potentially something that will be more of a solo targeted response without the likes of Hezbollah?
Well, it's hard to predict because the Iranians have been very tight-lipped about it. The last time in April, which was the most similar situation, when Israel attacked the Iranian consulate in Syria, and the Iranians retaliated by attacking Israeli soil from Iranian soil, they had been telegraphing the response and in a way also tipping through back channels to the Americans and other allies of the attack happening to try to minimize the impact of it and actually not having casualties so that it wouldn't escalate into something much bigger or explode into something bigger. This time they've been more tight-lipped. I think they're hedging a little more. They're creating some level of suspense or stress on the other side. They're creating a level of tension and anticipation, but at the same time also signaling that they may not as well do it. So it could be something in coordination with the other allies, because the attack wasn't just on Tehran. It was an assassination of a Hamas leader on the next day of an assassination of a Hezbollah leader in Beirut. So in a way, various members of the so-called axis of resistance were involved in these attacks. And so all of them sort of have been signaling that they reserve their right to retaliation. And so it could be something coordinated. It could also be, they could be waiting for the ceasefire talks and see what happens. And if it does actually bear some fruit, then they may take a different decision when it comes to the military response.
Negar Mortazavi, thank you so much for your time.